You're ruining my night with your insecurities. I'm going with him. She told me about the Barback after I asked why she let him kiss her neck. I went home alone, packed her clothes, changed the locks. She came back the next evening confused, then panicking when her key didn't work. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The bass from the bar's speakers thumped against my ribs like a second, anxious heartbeat. The Vortex was Lena's choice, a place she swore had better energy than our old haunts. It was all exposed brick, dim lighting, and a crowd that dressed like they were constantly auditioning for a music video. I hated it, but Lena loved it, and after 5 years, you learn to compromise. You learn that love sometimes means holding your girlfriend's purse while she shouts drink orders over the noise. I was doing just that, a leather clutch tucked under my arm like an awkward football, when I saw him. His name was Kyle, and he was the Barback. I knew this because Lena had pointed him out an hour earlier with a giggle. Look at his arms, Mark. I bet he could crush a watermelon with his thighs. I'd shrugged it off. Lena was flirty, always had been, and I'd never been the jealous type. I trusted her. That trust was beginning to feel like a naive, brittle thing. I'd lost sight of her for 10 minutes after a work friend called. When I found her, she was tucked into a shadowy nook near the restrooms, the same Kyle leaning into her space. His body language was a possessive cage. And Lena, she was tilted back, laughing at something he'd said, her hand resting on his leather-clad forearm. My feet carried me forward before my brain could formulate a plan. The noise faded into a dull roar in my ears. As I got closer, I saw it. Kyle dipped his head, his lips brushing the sensitive skin of her neck, just below her ear. It wasn't an accident. It was slow, deliberate. And Lena didn't pull away. She let her eyes flutter closed for a second, a smirk playing on her lips. The world narrowed to that single point. The 5 years, the shared apartment, the plans for a future, it all felt like it was crumbling at the edges. Lena, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm inside. Her eyes snapped open. For a fleeting second, I saw guilt, but it was quickly washed away by annoyance. Kyle straightened up, giving me a look that was equal parts challenge and mockery before slinking off to stack glasses, his job done. What? Lena asked, her voice sharp. What was that? I kept my tone low, calm. I wouldn't cause a scene. That was her territory. What was what? God, Mark, don't be so dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I just watched that guy kiss your neck. And you let him. She rolled her eyes, a practiced, theatrical motion. You were so paranoid. It was nothing. He was just joking around. You're ruining my night with your insecurities. The word insecure landed like a slap. It was her go-to weapon, the ultimate dismissal. Any valid concern I ever raised was neatly filed under Mark's insecurity. Insecurities? I repeated, the calm starting to crack. Lena, he had his hands on you. He kissed you. That's not a joke. That's disrespect. To you, and to me. See? There you go again, she hissed, stepping closer so her friends wouldn't hear. Making everything about you. He's fun, and you're standing here being a buzzkill. He knows how to have a good time, unlike you. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd woken up next to for half a decade. The woman whose family I spent holidays with. The woman I'd driven to the ER at 3 a.m. when she had a kidney stone. In that moment, she was a stranger. Her eyes, usually so bright and full of life, were hard and glittering with contempt. So what are you saying, Lena? I asked, my voice hollow. I'm saying I'm not going to let your issues dictate my life, she said, jabbing a finger into my chest. He's exciting. He's alive. You're just safe. And tonight, safe is boring. She glanced over my shoulder toward the bar, where Kyle was now watching us with a smug grin. The choice was made. You're ruining my night with your insecurities, she repeated, as if saying it again would make it true. I'm going with him. At least he knows how to party. She didn't wait for a response. She turned on her heel, her skirt flaring, and walked straight to Kyle. He threw a heavy arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him, laughing as if I had never existed. She didn't look back. I stood there, frozen in the nook they had just vacated. The bass kept thumping. People jostled past me, laughing, living their lives. I could feel the eyes of her friends on me from across the room, a mixture of pity and secondhand embarrassment. The humiliation was a hot, thick wave, threatening to pull me under. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip a table. I wanted to march over there and demand what? An apology? Her return? The respect I should have commanded by default? But all that fire burned out in a single, cold breath. There was nothing to demand. She had shown me, in the clearest terms possible, what I was worth to her. Less than a few minutes of attention from a barback. Less than the cheap thrill of a random Friday night. The rock, after 5 years of steadfast presence, decided to roll away. I turned and walked out of the vortex. The cool night air hit my face like a blessing. I didn't run. I walked with a purpose I hadn't felt in years, my footsteps steady on the pavement. The anger was still there, a hot coal in my gut, but it was already being encased in a layer of ice-clear certainty. She wanted to go home with him? Fine. She wouldn't be coming back to mine. The drive home was conducted in a silence so profound it felt like its own entity. There was no radio, no screaming, no crying. Just the hum of the engine and the rhythmic swipe of the wipers against a light, misting rain. My mind wasn't racing. It was eerily still, a lake frozen over in a single, sudden frost. I didn't think about Lena and Kyle. I thought about logistics. I pulled into my parking spot in front of my apartment, and sat for a moment, looking at the warm glow of the living room window. Our apartment. For 5 years, this had been our shared sanctuary. Now, it was a crime scene, and I was the sole investigator, judge, and executioner. Inside, the silence was even louder. The blanket we'd cuddled under last night was still crumpled on the couch. A half-finished glass of her wine sat on the coffee table. The ghost of our life together was everywhere, but it had no power over me anymore. The vision of her tilting her head back for that man had exorcised every sentimental demon. I went to the hall closet and pulled out a stack of moving boxes I'd never gotten around to recycling. I laid them out on the living room floor with the methodical precision of an assembly line worker. Then, I walked into the bedroom. I started with her side of the closet. I didn't smell her sweaters or reminisce over the dress she wore to our friend's wedding. I simply took armfuls of clothes and dumped them into the first box. Dresses, blouses, jeans. It was just fabric now. Meaningless. I moved to her dresser, emptying drawers of lingerie, socks, and the ridiculous collection of expensive skincare products that littered the top. Each item was a relic of a civilization that had just collapsed. The jewelry box I'd given her for our 3rd anniversary, I placed it carefully on top of a pile of sweaters. I wasn't a thief. I was just a curator returning exhibits. It took 2 hours. 4 large boxes, neatly taped shut and labeled with a Sharpie, Lena. I lined them up by the front door like soldiers awaiting deployment. They looked pathetic there, a life condensed into cardboard. Then, I called a 24-hour locksmith. The man who showed up an hour later was in his 50s, with a kind, tired face. He took one look at the boxes, then at me, my own face, probably a mask of grim determination. "You sure about this, son?" he asked, his voice gravelly. "It's permanent." "I've never been more sure of anything," I said, and the truth of it resonated in my bones. He nodded, as if he'd seen this scene 1,000 times before, and got to work. The whir of his drill biting into the doorframe was the sound of finality. When he handed me the 3 new keys, they felt cold and heavy in my palm. Symbols of a new lock, a new life, a new set of rules where my peace was the only currency that mattered. I paid him in cash, thanked him, and closed the door. The click of the new deadbolt sliding home was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I didn't wait up. I didn't stare at my phone. I took a long, hot shower, washing the smell of that bar and her betrayal off my skin. Then I went to bed, on my side, in the center of the mattress, and slept a dreamless, untroubled sleep for the first time in months. The next evening, I was meal prepping chicken and rice, a simple, clean task for my new, simple, clean life, when I heard the familiar click-clack of her heels in the hallway. My body went still, a hunter sensing prey. The key scraped at the lock, jiggled, scraped again. A sharp, impatient knock. "Mark, are you in there?" "My key isn't working." I wiped my hands on a towel and walked to the door. I didn't open it. I stood there, waiting, listening to her confusion curdle into frustration. "Mark, open the door." "This isn't funny." I leaned close to the wood. "It's not your home anymore, Lena." There was a beat of stunned silence. "What are you talking about?" "Open the door. Now, I'm not joking. You made your choice last night." Her voice shifted from anger to a wheedling tone. Come on, baby. Let me in. I'm sorry about last night, okay? I had too much to drink. It was a stupid mistake. I said nothing. The silence was my answer. The knob rattled violently. Mark, seriously, open the damn door. My stuff is in there. Your stuff is in boxes right here, I said, my voice flat. You can have it. Just tell me when you're coming to get it, and I'll leave it outside. This was not the script she had written. In her version, I was supposed to be angry, to yell, to demand an apology, a performance that would still center her, that would still give her the power. This calm, immovable object was something she didn't know how to handle. I heard a choked sob. Please, you can't do this to me. I walked away from the door and back to my kitchen. My phone, on the counter, began to buzz. Then it buzzed again. And again. I finished seasoning my chicken while the notifications piled up. When I was done, I picked up the phone. Lena, 7:14 p.m. Mark, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was a huge mistake. Lena, 7:22 p.m. He was a jerk, okay? He left me at his gross apartment this morning and blocked my number. I had to take an Uber home with no money. Lena, 7:35 p.m. You were right. You're always right. I was stupid. I need you. I have nowhere else to go. Lena, 7:41 p.m. Are you really going to ignore me? After everything we had. I love you. Lena, 8:02 p.m. Fine. Be that way. You're really going to be this petty? You're going to throw away 5 years because of one night? Lena, 8:17 p.m. I hate you. I hope you're happy. You're a cold-hearted bastard. I read them all. Each message was a layer peeling back, revealing the hypocritical core beneath. It was never about love, only about convenience. Her final message, the angry one, was the most truthful of all. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I felt a profound, settling clarity. The chapter was over. It was time to write the final sentence. I put the phone down, walked to the door, and for the first time since she'd left with Kyle, I opened it. I opened the door to a ghost of the woman I'd known. The carefully crafted party girl from last night was gone. Her makeup was smudged, her hair was a mess, and her eyes were red raw from crying. She smelled like stale beer and desperation. In her hand, she clutched her phone like a lifeline. For a second, she just stared, shocked that I had actually appeared. Then, the performance began anew. Mark, she breathed, her voice cracking as she tried to push past me. Thank God. I've been out here for. I didn't move from the doorway. My body was a barrier. You can't come in, Lena. Her face crumpled. Why are you doing this? I said I was sorry. He was a mistake. He used me and left me. I have nothing. I said nothing. I just watched her, my expression neutral. My silence was a mirror, and she was forced to look at her own reflection. Don't you have anything to say? She shrieked, the anger returning in a flash. Your girlfriend tells you she was used and abandoned, and you just stand there? What is wrong with you? That's not my problem anymore, I said, my voice even. You stopped being my girlfriend the moment you chose to leave with him. What happens after that choice is yours to deal with. The callousness of my response, the absolute lack of emotional hook, left her floundering. She was used to my empathy, my instinct to fix her problems. That well was now dry. Are you happy about this? She whispered, her eyes wide with a new kind of horror. Are you happy that he hurt me? I don't feel anything about it, Lena, I said, and it was the truth. It's just data. You chose a man who would treat you like that. The consequence is that you were treated like that. It's a closed loop. I'm not part of it. This broke her. The anger dissolved into a pathetic, gulping sob. She reached out to grab my arm, but I took a subtle step back, just out of reach. The rejection was physical, and it stung. Please, she begged, tears streaming down her face. I have nowhere to go. My friends are all your friends. My mom, she'll just say I told you so. You're all I have. You're my home. I looked past her, at the 4 cardboard boxes lined up against the wall. I bent down and picked up the first one, heavy with her clothes. Here, I said, placing it on the doorstep in front of her. This is your home now. I went back for the second box. Her pleading turned to bargaining. We can go to counseling. I'll quit going to those bars. I'll block every guy you want. Just let me in. Please, Mark, I love you. I placed the second box on top of the first. You don't love me, I said, my tone matter of fact, like I was stating the time. You love the safety net I provided. There's a difference. I retrieved the third box. The finality of my actions was sinking in, and her panic was reaching a fever pitch. "You owe me," she screamed, her voice echoing in the quiet hallway. 5 years. You don't get to just throw me away like trash." I set the third box down and looked her dead in the eye for the first time since I'd opened the door. The last vestiges of the love I'd felt were gone, incinerated in the cold furnace of my clarity. "I'm not throwing you away, Lena. You threw us away. In a bar, for a cheap thrill. I'm just the one who bothered to take out the garbage." I turned to get the final box, the one with her jewelry and precious things. When I came back with the last box, she was slumped against the wall, defeated. The fight had gone out of her. She just watched me, her face a mask of utter loss, as I placed the final piece of her old life at her feet. "I'll call your sister for you," I said. "She can come pick you up." Her head snapped up. "Don't you dare. I don't want her to see me like this." That, unfortunately, is no longer my concern. I took my phone out of my pocket. "Wait," she said, her voice a broken whisper. She looked at the boxes, then at my face, searching for any crack in the armor. There was none. "So this is it. After everything, you're really just done?" I met her gaze, and in that moment, I felt the complete and total absence of her in my life. She was a stranger standing in a hallway. The history we shared felt like a story I'd read about someone else a long time ago. "Yes, Lena, I'm done." I took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the clean, free air of my new reality fill my lungs. "I loved the woman I thought you were, but that woman wouldn't have done what you did. She was a story I told myself. You're just the disappointing ending." I saw the words land, each one a nail in the coffin of our relationship. There was no anger left in her, just a dawning, terrible understanding. She had gambled everything on my weakness, on my inability to let go. She had lost. "I've moved on," I said, and it wasn't a boast, just a simple statement of fact. "You're irrelevant to my happiness now. You have been since the moment you walked away." I took one last look at the pile of boxes, at the shattered woman beside them, and then I stepped back into my apartment. "Goodbye, Lena." I closed the door. There was no shouting, no last-minute pounding, just the sound of her quiet sobbing, which soon faded into the sound of her dragging her boxes down the hall. I walked back to my kitchen, to the meal I was preparing for my week ahead. The chicken was marinated. The rice was cooked. Everything was in order. The silence in my apartment was no longer empty. It was peaceful. It was mine. I was free. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.